Chelsea hijacked the Morgan Rogers deal for how much? Meanwhile, the World Cup third place playoff devolves into a sideman charity match. And who will prevail in football's greatest spectacle? This is DMAC Daily. Well, that was unexpected. Morgan Rogers, the man consistently linked with Arsenal for the past year or so, is now headed to London, but in a very different capacity, as Chelsea have hijacked the deal for £117 million, becoming the second largest transfer in Premier League history, overtaking recent British record fee £116 million for Anderson, and becoming Chelsea's biggest transfer ever. Just crazy, crazy money. Side note, before we get into the analysis of it all, this right here is my personal favorite kind of transfer, in the sense that, number one, no one really saw it coming. Fabrizio wasn't exactly teasing Rodgers to Chelsea for months here. He was for Arsenal though. But yeah, this switch up happened, for lack of a better phrase, out of the blue. Number two, love a good old-fashioned hijack deal. Newcastle fans understandably beg to differ, but the sheer drama of it all, kind of like Eze to Spurs last year, right? Until Arsenal snatched him away, which leads me to reason number three. The fact that Rodgers was poached by a rival club, the audacity of it all from Chelsea. I think it makes for great theatre personally. Now, as to my thoughts on Rodgers to Chelsea, and I think this is the classic scenario of multiple things can be true at once, right? Because it's a statement signing for Chelsea. Yeah, boy, oh boy, the money is just outrageous. £117 million, the fifth largest transfer in football history. Yeah, the game's beyond cooked. Then again, Elliot Anderson held that exact same honor 2 weeks ago. Kind of hilarious, by the way, that he's been dethroned now by just £1 million precisely. Like, how do these agreements even come to fruition? We've also got Spurs dropping £85 million on a midfielder relegated with 2 clubs in 2 seasons, followed by Tonali for £100 million. And who knows what else we've got in store in the weeks and months ahead. The figures of today's market are completely absurd. Suddenly, Gordon to Barcelona doesn't seem all that expensive. Now, it is worth mentioning that in the case of Rodgers, his current deal at Villa had him locked down till 2031, so a drastic overpay was needed to get this over the line. Ultimately, I think the main question we have to ask here is, does Rodgers come into this side and drastically improve Chelsea? I think he does exactly that. Too often, Chelsea have been criticised for signing players for the future, as is the Blueco model, and whilst Rodgers is only 23 himself with room for growth, this is undoubtedly for the here and now at Chelsea. It was interesting to read that Xabi Alonso's input was key in getting this deal over the line. I think that's a good indicator that we're going to see his Chelsea team operate in a similar capacity to his Leverkusen side in that 3-4-2-1 system, with Rodgers walking into that starting 11 in the left winger attacking midfielder role. He's a huge upgrade on the personnel Chelsea currently possess in that specific area, because it is noticeably weak right now between Bino Gittins, who's unproven, Garnacho, who's already been shown the exit door, Kenda, who's again unproven, Pedro Neto, nuff said, and Mudryk, who isn't even eligible to play. So I know Chelsea fans couldn't care less about the price, considering how noticeably weak the left side of Chelsea's attack was. But then again, Rodgers is also able to operate on the right, as we saw in the World Cup, as a traditional 10 or even as a false 9. He has the ball carrying ability and athleticism to thrive all across the final third. Although I do see him primarily featuring in that left-sided role paired with Palmer or Esteval on the right. Hey, as long as Pedro Neto's not playing, I'll take whoever. No, but on a more serious note, I am curious to see what level Rodgers can reach in this Chelsea team, because this is evidently a player with a lot of quality. He has that ability to create something out of nothing, but consistency sometimes eludes him. It's probably his biggest criticism as a player. He goes hot and cold frequently. However, I think Alonso's system is uniquely suited to his qualities, because at Villa, he was mostly playing out wide or as a 10. Neither of those positions really get the best out of Rodgers, because he's not an explosive winger nor a traditional playmaker in that sense. He's sort of a hybrid of both, really. I will say it is fascinating that the Man City Academy obsession continues. Almost £300 million now spent on the likes of former youth players Rodgers, Palmer, Lavia, Delap, Gittins, Adarabioyo, alongside Sancho, who came in on loan. So far, it's probably 1 from 6 that have really delivered in a Chelsea shirt. I do wonder what this also means now for Arsenal's recruitment ambitions. Rodgers was obviously a primary target, but they were unwilling to go north of 100 mil, which is fair enough considering that's bonkers bonkers money, and Arsenal already have a similar profile in Eze. Truth be told, I don't think Arsenal really needed this player. They probably need someone more along the lines of Barcola, an explosive, technical left winger. Christos Solis is on his way, it seems, for £34 million, fresh off of a 51 goal contribution season. So that's another promising squad addition. But yeah, I don't think missing out on Rodgers is the end of the world for them. And I don't say that to suggest that it's a bullet dodged or another Mudryk in the making. I just think it's the reality that Chelsea need Rodgers more than Arsenal probably need Rodgers. Now, from Villa's perspective, it's another big loss. Their squad is low-key being raided right now. Tielemans' departure is a huge one for 35 mil, Digne to PSG for 10 mil, and now with Rodgers to smash the club's previous record sale. Granted, Middlesbrough, I believe, have a 20% sell-on clause included, so they're set to earn a pretty penny from this transfer too, which also means Villa are set to technically receive less than their Grealish sale previously. I guess the Manzambi deal now makes a lot more sense. Also, Joao Gomes has already replaced Tielemans, so they've at least been quick to react for those imminent departures, but it must be frustrating no less to have won the Europa League and finish inside the top 4, only to see your team be picked apart by the league's traditional big boys. A rebuild off the back of reaching the big leagues again, having your most valuable player poached by a team that finished 10th in the same league. I'm sorry, the optics of that are just not great. Does this have a knock-on effect too for their other big name players? Martinez isn't guaranteed to stay. Konsa's only got 2 years remaining on his current deal. Watkins is another one. Maybe they go full circle now and look to bring Grealish back, who knows? But the word on the street is that Ibrahim Mbaye is who they have in mind. So nonetheless, I'm curious to see the direction Villa go down this summer. Now for some quick transfer updates before we shift our attention to World Cup news. And Newcastle have seen a €46 million bid for Spurs' Lucas Bergvall rejected. The Swede is a wanted man right now, with Nottingham Forest also seeing their opening bid for the 20-year-old rejected. Will he be the Tonali replacement or the Anderson replacement? Knowing full well just how keen these clubs are on spending, I wouldn't be surprised if Spurs can land a sale for 50 to 60 million pounds. Speaking of central midfielders on the move, and Christ Inau Olai, the Côte d'Ivoire and Trabzonspor rising midfield star, is now on his way to Italy, joining Fiorentina for 29 million pounds. A statement signing for La Viola. I guarantee you this lad is going to be worth at least double that in a year or two. One of the finest young midfielders out there. Such a unique profile, immensely technical, one for the future, no doubt. Meanwhile, Jonathan Duran is on his way to Benfica. Yes, the journeyman 22-year-old who had already plied his trade in 4 separate continents and most recently featured for Russia's Zenit St. Petersburg on loan, is now destined for Benfica on a loan from Al Nassr. Maybe he'll finally kick on with his development here. He's always been a very talented individual. I just have doubts about his mentality. Perhaps this is the perfect environment for the Colombian to flourish. Meanwhile, Leeds just dropped €40 million on Tarek Muharemovic from Sassuolo, another 6'4" giant, another fantastic addition off the back of Harry Wilson on a free transfer, whilst Nottingham Forest have also added a free transfer of their own in Austrian international Javier Schlager on a 2-year deal. A sensible addition, really, a highly experienced central midfielder who's also worked under Oli Glasner too. One free agent's future that we're still eagerly awaiting on though is Mo Salah, the Egyptian king, with Besiktas linked heavily in the last couple days. That would be a huge pull for Turkish football, and of course for Besiktas having only landed another top Premier League winger a week ago in Leandro Trossard. And how about this? World Cup icon Vozinha is reportedly now in active talks with Chilean powerhouse club Colo Colo. Unreal to see the Cabo Verde legend recognized. He's been chased heavily by several Brazilian clubs in the last few days. Everyone wants a piece of the most popular goalkeeper on the planet. Bro is about to peak at 40 years old. What a story, man. We switch gears now to World Cup action, and ironically the World Cup's most forgettable fixture ended up delivering a bit of a classic in the end, a 6-4 goal fest in favour of England as Didier Deschamps bows out as France's manager in rather bizarre fashion. Kind of reminded me of Fergie's send-off in many ways. Now, to be fair, the vibes were low for France's team, for both teams really, coming into today. Nothing but pride to play for, I guess. Perhaps a chance to give some of the lesser impactful players in the squad a chance. France making 7 changes, England 8 to their starting 11. And it turns out it was a bit of a mental game of football. I don't know if the French team didn't get a lot of sleep the night before, but they were atrociously bad in that first half. Inside 2 minutes, they found themselves trailing. Declan Rice picking up the ball in space and given license to drive forward before effortlessly then slotting it away. The goal scorer then turned provider shortly after for Konsa off the corner. France were then at 6s and 7s defensively for the third from Saka, and he'd then make it 4 right on the stroke of halftime. A shambolic 45 minutes or so from Deschamps' side. So wholesale changes were made at the break, including Dembele and Barcola, and their impact would be immediate. Olise fed in Mbappe brilliantly to make it 4-1. 5 minutes later, Mbappe then delivered a spectacular pass of his own to find Barcola, who made no mistake. And shortly after that, Olise and Mbappe would link up once more, with Mbappe smashing in another brilliant goal on his left peg. 4-3. The game was so open at that point. Olise may have broken Pele's record for the most World Cup assists, but his shooting was all over the place, missing multiple sitters. Gusto then gave away a penalty for Saka to complete his hat-trick before Dembele made it 5-4, but we're still not done. Late sub Bellingham then produced a phenomenal solo goal to close out the proceedings, his 7th of the tournament. Just a crazy game in totality. Some of the most comically bad defending I've ever seen from two elite teams at the World Cup. A bit of a shame, really, that that's the way Deschamps' France career ends. Like, he deserved better than 6 goals to England's B team. That's crazy work. That being said, it wasn't all bad for France. Olise's goal-scoring touch went wayward, but 7 assists is still a fantastic showing. Then there's Mbappe, who once again takes top spot in the World Cup rankings. 22 goals in 22 games, 14 goal involvements in 8 appearances in the 2026 World Cup. Disgusting stat padding right there. Crazy to think he's only 27. You know, Messi only had 5 World Cup goals at that age. Ronaldo just 2. What an astonishing legacy the Frenchman is riding at football's greatest tournament. The same could be said for Jude Bellingham too, the first Englishman to crack 7 goals at a World Cup, doing so from midfield. Regardless of England's shortcomings, he can hold his head high. A colossus of a footballer, and still only 23. Last point on this game, and I was so baffled at full time considering that Saka played the full 90 today, and then came out bemoaning the fact that he wanted to play more football this tournament and that he was fit enough to do so. Obviously, the hat-trick was a timely reminder of his exemplary qualities. He's still evidently England's most reliable wide player, someone who has always delivered at major tournaments, but in 2026, had been used sparingly up until the 3rd place playoff match. And yes, he was coming back from injury, so he wasn't fit and raring to go from the beginning. But if he was fit enough to play 90 minutes today, how come he didn't even feature v Argentina? That is just mind-boggling to me. And look, Tuchel's England career has been defined by high-profile selection snubs, but this one for me takes the cake. What a strange end for both England and France. Felt like a bit of a pre-season outing at times, as I said before, sideman charity vibes, but hey, the entertainment factor was there at least. The most goals of any game all tournament, unless tomorrow can somehow outscore this, which seems incredibly unlikely at this stage. Which brings me to the big show, as we're less than 24 hours away from the 2026 World Cup final. The biggest match on offer, so many compelling narratives at play. The Kings of South America v the Kings of Europe, the long-awaited Messi v Yamal showdown. Fitting that these two will probably only cross paths once in their lifetimes, and it's at a World Cup final. Yamal still probably has at least another 15 years or so to go in his career. Messi, on the other hand, who knows? I thought it was a wrap in 2022. The legacy was complete. He'd won it all. After all those years of international failure too, he'd finally turned it around, winning 3 successive trophies, including that illustrious World Cup honor. So from then on out, he could just do his thing in MLS and call it a day as the immortal of the game that he already was. But then he won a Copa America, playing a pivotal role. And then he pulled up to 2026 and delivered masterclass after masterclass. The group stage stat padding was insane. To be doing that at that age was extraordinary. But the clutch factor in the knockout stages and that performance v England, I genuinely believe that was one of the most iconic things I've ever seen in Messi's career. 1-0 down, he pulls off that facial expression to Bellingham before single-handedly destroying England at 39. A performance so ridiculous that not even the most delusional of Argentina rigged everything haters could complain about the merit of the magician. So regardless of whether he can guide La Albiceleste to back-to-back World Cups, this tournament will never be forgotten. To do what he did at his age, for me, It's the best individual showing I've seen at a World Cup in my lifetime. I know there's 10 other players on the pitch, but without Messi, this team doesn't even come close to a World Cup final. Their opponents, however, are all about the collective, aren't they? The cog in the machine, a team with an abundance of world-class players at their disposal, yet a team that thrives together. It hasn't been fireworks throughout. They're not the most entertaining side in the tournament, but few can deny their worthiness as finalists, especially after that demolition of France. Defensively, they're outstanding. Their midfield is on another level to any other countries. The fact that Pedri is probably going to start from the bench speaks volumes, whilst Rodri has been reminding everyone this tournament that he's the main man. He's a Ballon d'Or winner for a reason, and he's still a special player. Which brings me to a certain 19-year-old who has the entire world at his feet, a player who is already a bit of a veteran at this point, yet this teenager, in his first ever World Cup, has played an influential role in Spain reaching the final. Funny enough, Yamal's probably been a bit below his ridiculous standards in 2026, but we've still seen glimpses. Against France, he was a perennial threat, and if ever there was an occasion for Yamal to deliver a masterclass, it would be a World Cup final. So regardless of who prevails, what an occasion this is set to be. My brain says Spain are just too good, too methodical for Argentina, but my heart says Messi creates even more history. As I often say on the show, only time will tell. Let me know your thoughts and predictions for tomorrow's fixture below though. Thanks so much as always for tuning in to DMAC Daily. Your support has been incredible throughout the World Cup. I'm so grateful for you guys truly. But anyways, take care and I'll see you tomorrow.